Well, he's not the back door.
Had a view of you then, Henry,
Yes, I think I've sorted
and
it.
then
I've
it went off.
I've switched a few things around, so it should be working fine now.
Yeah, you're back on. Yeah,
Lovely, lovely. Well, let's get started then. Look,
I can
Chris,
see you now, mate.
it's great to have you on the podcast. Welcome to
Yep.
Chris Thompson, UK grappling legend, head honcho of Grapplefest, one of the world's best submission grappling events, and a current resident, making us all feel very jealous of the weather in Malaga. How long have you been over in Malaga then, Chris?
Yeah. 5 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, 5 years. But my mum and dad my mum and dad lived further down the coast. They'd been over here since they were like about late 50s, something like that. So over 20 years. So I've been coming back and forth here for like over 20 years. So I knew a lot of people here, and it was the goal to get here one day. And Brexit sort of just pushed me quickly to do it. You know what I mean? It was either that or it's pretty difficult to do nowadays. Now left the EU, UK's left the EU, so it was
Mm.
either basically get myself in there and get it done in sort of the end of 2019, start 2020, or it was hang on a bit longer, like which was the original plan was to hang on a little bit longer. But it sort of pushed me over the edge. So yeah, I'm glad it did in the end.
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah,
And so,
we're both very jealous. I think.
oh yeah, definitely. Like you say, it's been so frosty in the mornings recently, and then it's quite warm as the day sort of picks up because the sun's shining. But when you're waking up, you're defrosting the car and things like that. I'm sure that's a thing of the past living in Malaga.
Yeah, it is. But you guys are right down south, aren't you? You got a lot better weather than where I did in the northwest.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just got loads of rain and cold. That was it. Pretty much 300 days a year. So I've swapped 300 days a year of miserable to 300 days a year of sunshine.
Well,
So
that's a good
can't
trade-off.
complain.
That's a pretty good
Yeah,
trade-off. Whereabouts in the
it's
northwest are you
not bad, is
from?
it?
You say you're from Wigan.
Uh, Wigan, yeah, originally,
Nice.
yeah, that's where I was sort of born. That's where my mum's from. So yeah, that's where I was based. But I lived in a place called Ormskirk, which is just outside Liverpool. Lived there for about the last 10, 15 years, I'd say, before I moved over here.
Nice. Well, I definitely relate to the northwest weather, mate. I'm from Burnley, so I grew up.
Oh, are you? Oh, you're
Yeah,
on
I
the other
grew up
road then.
being no stranger to the clouds and the rain for most of the
Yeah,
year.
pretty much the same as in Milltown, isn't it? Just up the road from Wigan, so it's pretty much
Yeah,
the same sort of thing, isn't it?
yeah, mate. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Chris,
It's
Got a
not
couple of
too.
mates there who've got gyms.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, John Stokes. He's a mate of mine. He's got a place in Burnley. Yeah, he's been around forever.
nice.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Nice. Okay, yeah. Actually, to be fair, I started my whole grappling journey for me when I was down south, so I don't really have much connection with people there.
Ah, okay.
I
Yeah,
went
yeah.
to one up in Nelson. I went to a really good gym, very kind of grassroots, but it's actually like in like a converted house. It's quite strange, but yeah, judo black belt there, and just really good bunch. Loads of big strong farm boys, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So get some big units around the northwest, mate, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's all the farm strength, isn't it? But I guess that's kind of one of the things we wanted to talk about was the just obviously the history of all the catch stuff that you know. It's I think you're the one of the big aficionados of it. You know, it's
Yeah, it's a strange one really because I've trained quite a bit of catch. Trained at the Snake Pit obviously, and then I've trained with
mm,
ASW and things like that. And we originally started the Coliseum and stuff. It was all that, but I never really knew it was catch wrestling when we were sort of doing it. Because I didn't specifically train for catch wrestling. I was training MMA, for that really. But the style, that Lancashire style where you're from, all the older guys taught us that style of wrestling, and using Nelsons and hard Nelsons, and
mm,
and lots of riding, especially on the floor. So we used to use that. It wasn't specifically I trained just for cats. It was more we trained well, the guys did used to call it submission wrestling or submission grappling. But people did play off the backs. It wasn't like we were playing, oh, if you pin, that's it, you finished. And then I did do a little bit of wrestling when I was a kid, only little bits and pieces, which stuff with Roy Wood. I went to Roy Wood, who runs a Snake Pit now. His daughter Andy runs it. We were actually in primary school together in the same class,
oh wow,
so same age. You know what I mean? So it's went full circle. But then I hadn't seen it for about God, probably must have been 15, 20 years, and then just bumped back into her on the scene, and now back sort of friendly, and I talked to the family quite a lot. Her family knew my family, so sort of went full circle,
Amazing.
really. Yeah.
So when did you
Brilliant.
start grappling, Chris? When did you start with your sort of journey? You said you did sort of MMA first, but
Yeah, MMA, doing all that. God, I'm 50 now, so I was about 28, I think, something like that. So around over 22 years ago, something around that, something about that, yeah.
yeah. And was that primarily with the objective to fight MMA, to do, I guess back then it would have been like cage fighting. No
Yeah,
holds
it
barred, that sort
definitely
of thing.
was, mate. Definitely. Well, yeah, I've had quite a few fights, as many in a ring. When it first started, it's ridiculous. Really, if I see it now, it is ridiculous. I know Pride used to do it, but they had a huge ring and they had nets all around it. I've fought in like 16-foot boxing rings, which is just ridiculous. And
Wow.
your knees and your elbows be ripped to pieces off the canvas. It's the same. Used to use the same canvas as did for boxing for MMA. It was crazy.
Wow.
But yes, specifically, yeah, I was usual guy watching the UFC, done that. I'd boxed, played a lot of rugby, did boxing and stuff when I've been younger. Never really found anything to sort of, itch the scratch, if you know what I mean. Scratch the itch, if you know what I mean. And I was just a typical guy watching it. I used to watch it on a Sunday when it was on Bravo. I don't know if you remember that back in the
Yes,
day.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, years and years ago, and then it graduated on. I started looking online. I was, found out about Pride and things like that, and was watching all those early 2000s. This is, and then in the end, it was just sort of like, oh, I want to fancy have a go in it, really, and that was it. Difficult to find though back then. It was difficult to find MMA clubs. You could go wrestling, you could go boxing, you could go Thai boxing. There wasn't loads of places where you could put it together and do everything together.
And were they doing that at, obviously,
Yeah.
the Snake Pit's sort of the home of catch wrestling, but were they doing kind of MMA focused stuff there at the time?
No, the Snake Pitch really had a big, massive revival in the last 10 years or so.
Really?
It had sort of gone, yeah, it had sort of mainly because there's the Snake Pit and Aspel Olympic Wrestling Club, the freestyle wrestling, is in the same gym. But basically, they were pretty much heavily concentrating on the freestyle wrestling because catch had died out quite a lot, to be honest. There was just more of the old fellows had been doing it, was still taught it, a few people are training. But as a sport itself, it wasn't being taught so much. It was more just freestyle wrestling, just as we see in the Olympics now, because that's the sort of backed by the UWW, United World Wrestling, and it was mainly doing that. And Roy was teaching that as well. And he'd more sort of been asked to do things in. He went over to Japan, and they were asking him, about this. And obviously Billy Robinson had been over there. He trained Sakuraba and a couple of other guys, who were Sakuraba's probably my favorite MMA guy, sort of ever. And they knew him. And Roy was sort of the last of the people who'd been taught by a guy called Billy Riley, because it was originally known as Riley's Gym. It wasn't known as a Snake Pit. It was a Japanese who gave it the nickname, the Snake Pit. They called it the Snake Pit. It was just known as Riley's Gym. A guy called Billy Riley from Wigan, who actually lived a few streets down from where my grandma and my great grandma came from, in Wigan. My mum eventually, and basically it was his gym, and they sort of I think they got Roy over into Japan, and they started wanting to teach some moves, and then I think a few other people got interested. I think he went to America and places like that, and I think it was Andrew had a big push on sort of reviving the catch, about 10 years ago or so, and now it's booming in there. They're having classes every week, they're doing tournaments, they're doing English championships, they're doing world championships, so they're doing really, really well. And I'm in their WhatsApp group, and they're doing fantastic. It's full. It's got people from all over the world in it, and people from all over Europe are traveling. Even people from America are coming over to learn it. So it's really nice to see it have a revival. But like I said, I've learned a lot of catch, done a lot of catch, but my catch was primarily always for what I call submission grappling. I hate the term no gi, to be honest. I use it because everybody uses it, but it was more to use within my grappling for MMA and for submission grappling. I've done a bit BJJ in the gi. Only probably did about 5 years or so. But I've done loads and loads. I've been grappling for a good few decades now. So it was real enough just to put it into that. But I didn't know at the time when I first ever really learned that I was doing catch wrestling. I didn't know. I was just thought it was just submission wrestling. That's what you did. So I didn't do it with a specific mindset of I'm doing catch wrestling. If you get me.
Yes, yeah.
Even though, luckily enough, I was actually taught by guys like Roy Wood. I was taught by guys like Roy Wood and Ian Bromley, who are absolute legends of the sport. And at the time, I didn't know they were. But, luckily enough, I was.
Amazing.
What sort of era were some of the names you mentioned sort of heading over to Japan and sort of coaching some of the guys over there and showing people, their sort of techniques?
I think Billy Robinson was over there in the late 80s, early 90s, I think, teaching over there. I think when he started with Sakuraba and stuff, because Sakuraba was in Pride, wasn't he?
Yeah.
God, probably mid 90s, late 90s, wasn't he? Things like that. So I think he must have been over there then. I know Roy was over there in the 2000s a few times. I don't know if he went in the 90s. I'd have to check that up with him. But I know those guys were over there teaching. Because what was there's another guy, wasn't it? Fukuyama was he called? The guy. So maybe he was one of the first ones actually before that's the guy, before Sakuraba, wasn't he? So maybe they went over there earlier. I'm not 100% sure. I should have maybe looked it up, but I'm terrible with dates and stuff. I'm awful with dates. It's really weird. My wife said sometimes, she goes, "How do you remember so much about when I'm teaching things like that?" And I said, "I don't know, my brain just works like that." But you asked me dates or what happened in the morning, I can't remember anything. So
yeah, I'm the same. You've only got so much room in your brain to learn stuff, and most of it's just full of grappling moves and things like that.
Yeah, that's it. So I think that's pretty much it.
I think we've spoken a few times on the podcast about the history of grappling, and I guess if you're like if people who are watching this are kind of interested in jiu-jitsu, and we all know about the kind of Gracie lineage and how that story of how modern day grappling, I suppose, but they would class it as jiu-jitsu, has kind of evolved. But really, there were probably lots of other sort of historic lines, all really running kind of at the same time as jiu-jitsu was developing in Brazil. Brazilian jiu-jitsu was developing, and I think it's really interesting as UK grapplers,
100%. I mean,
to understand about how this lineage of catch wrestling really was probably developing at the same time, if not earlier, than what was happening in Brazil. I think it's fascinating.
Way earlier. Yeah, it was the 1800s. Really, it became big. But I think wrestling has been around. They say it's the oldest sport in some form or other. I think they're basically saying these days, I think ancient Greece and India are the two places where it was first they can date it back to. But you're talking, God, I don't know, it's thousands of years ago, isn't it, the dates? But catch officially, so I think it's around the 1830s or something like that. It became a recognised sport in the UK. It was catch as catch can became a recognised sport. I'm sure it's around the 1830s, something like that. It was in the Olympics. I think it was 1908.
Really? Wow.
When they held it in the UK, I think, because at the time, I think they used to I think at the time, whichever country held the Olympics, they used to do if they had a national sport, people were allowed to enter that, and catch as catch can was actually in one of the Olympics. I'm sure it's 1908 or 1912, something like that. It must have been just before the First World War, anyway.
Wow.
And I think we medaled pretty well, and I think a lot of the guys from the Northwest did pretty well in that. Got some Olympic medalists. So it's been around for hundreds of years. Way predates Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. And let's face it, I mean, pretty much most of the moves on top are all exactly. There's only so many ways you can manipulate the human body, isn't there? So all the stuff it's called a kimura or udigarami in judo. Judo's been around a long time as well. It's another story. I pretty much think the Brazilians got taught judo, just got taught nawaza. I think it had to be called jiu-jitsu because they weren't allowed to use the term judo. I think Maeda wasn't allowed to use it or something like that. I'm not sure the exact thing, but it's all exactly the same, really. It's all pretty much the same. But in the UK, it was getting done. I mean, the Gracies are from Scotland, aren't they? That's where they date back to. They're from Scotland.
I've heard that, yeah.
So it's true. Yeah. If you trace their ancestry back, but I'm pretty sure all this was being done before. Luta Libre, which is over there, which is known. I think that translates free fight. Something like that. That's catch wrestling, basically, because it's done without the gi. I think the gi got brought in as a rich man's sport, wasn't it? And the Gracies used to teach the rich guys, and Lucha Libre was done in the favelas. So, but lucha libre and catch wrestling are pretty much the same thing. Apart from I think they took the pin out of lucha libre and started to use the guard as well, because the guard is what separates BJJ for me.
Yeah.
Judo, wrestling, catch wrestling, lucha libre, that's got the pin. So as soon as you're pinned, you've lost, which I'm not a fan of, really. Putting someone on the back, I don't think you'd beat me just because you put me on my back, but that's a real set, isn't it?
Yeah.
But in jiu-jitsu and BJJ and submission grappling, which is what I like now, submission grappling, which is sort of anything goes, the guard is part of it. The guard's a huge part of it. So I think they just sort of basically added that in.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think that's probably what elevated at the time sort of jiu-jitsu to
I think a lot of the guard came from Ko's and judo. It came from Ko's and judo, didn't it? A lot of the guards. If you look at that, there's old videos of them playing De La Riva, isn't there? And play, doing scissor sweeps off the back and stuff like that. So the Nawaza part of judo. I think the pins are a bit different then, weren't they? I think nowadays it's just if your shoulders touch the floor, isn't it? You basically that's it. Huge throws and that's finished. But I think then they got, I don't know how it was, I think there was a minute or so on the floor to play, wasn't there? So guard became wrestling, all upper body throws, didn't it?
Yeah.
So I think things have just sort of, evolved along the way. You know what I mean? They've all become their own grappling sports, but the only thing that separates it all for me is the rule set. Simple as that.
Yeah, you're totally right.
Sorry, go on, Henry.
No, go on, Steve.
So, and you can even find that within jiu-jitsu, can't you? Within the jiu-jitsu competitions we get, there's slight differences in certain rule sets, and certain people at certain levels can do certain moves, or certain things are allowed, certain things are not allowed. So you're absolutely right. Just there's just these various different things that just sort of separate everything. But you're just, as you just said, Chris, you're just manipulating the human body in a finite number of ways, aren't you?
Yeah, there's only so many certain ways you can do it, isn't it? I mean, just going back to say MMA or a BJJ comp or a submission grappling comp, there's only so many ways you finish, isn't there? There's a rear naked choke, a kimura, double wrist lock, an armbar, a guillotine, a triangle. There's only so many, isn't there? Say 10 submissions or something. What's become different now is the way people set them up, because the setups and the way people play, doing things now, that's advancing all the time, and that's what's changing, isn't it? The skill level of the competitors, and we're coming up with new ways to get there. But the finishes are pretty much all the same still. I don't think I've ever seen anything really that I didn't see in the first 2 years in terms of a finish. Do you know what I mean? They're all the same, aren't they? All the finishes are the same. What has changed and what is constantly evolving is the setups and the way to do things. So that's what interests me these days is the minute details to get there.
Yeah. Totally.
I mean, we were saying, sorry, go on, Henry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're totally right. It's the kind of rule set, the environment, like where are you actually doing the grappling? Is it a ring? Is it a cage? Is it like just a flat mat, a pit or something like that? And then, the outfit, what are you wearing? That's going to determine what happens as well. I think my wife's family are from the Canaries. And when we go over there, they have this sort of, I think it's called like Luce de Canaria, something like that.
Yeah, I've heard it. Yeah, the Canarian wrestling, yeah.
Yeah, do they have anything like that down in Malaga? Is there sort of mainland Spanish grappling styles?
No, that is actually for the Canary Islands. Yeah, I've actually watched it myself though on YouTube. I've had a look at it and seen it. Yeah, you haven't got anything here though. No, it's quite. There wasn't a big scene for wrestling here at all in Spain, but they've now BJJ's sort of I don't know, I say BJJ grappling and jiu-jitsu have both sort of exploded. I think a hell of a lot, especially post-COVID. Really got up. I think it's still a few years behind the UK and other parts of Europe, compared in terms of numbers, but it's definitely expanding rapidly. It's I remember seeing a big boom in the UK about 10 years ago, and everyone sort of started to come through now, and some of those guys coming through at black belts, when I first remember seeing them come through, and they're doing good at white and blue, you see looking at them now, those guys are black belts getting open up their own gyms, and it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That's sort of happening now over here. You're starting to see that happen over here. But like I say, I was coming to this coast for 20 years, and there was like 2 or 3 gyms. That was it. for years, and now there's like, God, I bet there's 20 just along the coastline of Malaga. I bet there's 20 gyms.
Amazing. It's crazy how it's blowing up, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah, it's great, fantastic. I love it. I love the way it's getting bigger. Hopefully it'll just keep growing and growing. But it's we're in that bubble, though, aren't we? Where we do it, we train it, pretty much every day. And we probably think it's a lot bigger than it is,
Yeah.
and it's still a minority sport. But I think the UFC is getting big as well, especially over here. Obviously, Topuria winning the UFC belt over here. Even though I like winding all the Spanish up and saying he's from Georgia, but which they don't like. But that's got big, and it's brought a few. We've had quite a few youngsters come through the doors in the last 6 months or so. So I've noticed that, but it's definitely blowing up. But it's still a minority sport. If you look at the likes of football over here, and then you see football in the UK, we're still way behind, aren't we? But it's growing, it's growing.
Yes.
But again, it's a lot tougher, isn't it? It's tougher.
Yeah. It's certainly not that national sport, is it?
It's I'll tell you what, that's an interesting one, because obviously me and Steve, we coach the kids class, and we've kind of built up a good sort of following of kids coming into our classes. And I always kind of use the analogy, like I compare it to football, because there's a lot of football's obviously massive, isn't it? Pretty much every kid would have kicked a ball at some point in their childhood, and some of them get into it and do Sunday league and that sort of thing. Others might not, but they certainly know what it is. But I think there's a lot more sort of benefit to kids' development coming to jiu-jitsu, learning how to kind of cooperate and work in a team and not throw a paddy. We always sort of say, look, if you want to throw a paddy on the mats, you can go and play football. Go and do that over there. But when you're on the mats, you need to learn how to kind of, learn how to have a bit of decorum and learn how to lose and learn how to work in a team, and not just throwing your toys out the pram all the time. So it's an interesting comparison, isn't it, considering football's so popular?
Definitely more discipline, I think, in martial arts, isn't it? I mean, my lad used to play, started off 5-a-side, then went into, I think he goes to 7, then he goes to 9, then he goes to 11 when they get to like about 11 years old at high school. And he used to change for that, and he used to play. And, the kids that obviously watch the pro footballers on TV, and they'd be, shouting at the ref, spitting all over the floor, rolling around for fouls and stuff like that. And this is when they were 11 and 12, and you're like, Jesus Christ, you know what I mean? It's like, it's not what you want to see, is it? It's not really what you want your kids doing. So I think there's a lot more respect. And plus, I think it's just tougher, isn't it? It's harder, it's tougher, and the kids stick at it, especially things like judo and jiujitsu and wrestling. If they stick at any of those sort of things, then I think you can get a pretty level-headed kid, to be honest.
Yeah.
So it's a lot harder on the body, isn't it? And it's also, it's a lot more humbling. It's a lot more quickly humbling, isn't it? There's no room for bullies.
Definitely, definitely, 100%.
It all gets weeded out fairly quickly, doesn't it?
The only thing I don't like seeing, which I have seen a bit, like I say, I was laughing with Henry when he first messaged me, and I said we were talking about the kids. I know you to build up your kids thing, and I said I have literally only ever taught 2 kids classes of my entire life. So I've just said I'm the worst person to talk to kids about because I haven't got the patience for it. So when I had the gym in the UK, my missus used to teach them with a couple of the blue belts, so they'd do that then. But I'm digressing anyway. But what I don't like is I see some pushy parents on them, and they're running Instagram accounts for the kids. They're sticking them in tournaments. They're pushing them here. They're sponsoring them there. And sometimes I think, can you not just let your kid just grow up and learn? And let's see when they get to 14, 15, 16, then they can make their own minds up. But you've got like 8-year-olds with Instagram pages with the nicknames like The Killer and Showing Armbar, I'm just like, just let them enjoy themselves. Will you just let them enjoy themselves and grow up? Just grow up with it.
Let them be kids, man.
Exactly.
Let them be kids. I think there's probably a small contingent of kids who probably want that.
Very small.
Yeah, whereas I think in most cases like that, that's actually about the parent, isn't it? Living vicariously through their kids or whatever.
You took the words out of my mouth. Took my words out of my mouth there. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, I don't know, you potentially probably stand more chance of the kid getting to a certain age and thinking, you know what, I'm done with this, because it's just been pressure throughout, 5 years of their life, say, until they hit teenager. Whereas I think for most kids, I mean, obviously, like I said, there's going to be outliers, but for most kids, you just like we always try and let fun be as much, if not more, of an element, because it's like it's not just about when you're a kid, it's not just about coming and learning the techniques, it's about the community and making friends and learning all those good lessons without realizing you're learning them and just having fun, and letting
100%. I wish more people would do that for you. And I know, there'd be some of these kids are just ridiculously pushed into these tournaments. I've seen them when I've been at tournaments crying their eyes out, and the parents going, get back on the mat and screaming, and I'm just like, that's not the way to make them fall in love with this sport whatsoever. And my boy's trained from when he was 4 or 5. He's just turned 18 a few weeks ago. And he's not actually training himself now. And everyone always says to me, I bet your kid's a killer. He trained up until he was like 16, but he's more into football and he's playing football. He's going to the gym and he's playing football. And I've said to him, as long as you're doing something, that's fine. I said, he's expressed a bit of interest in MMA. I think he'll come back to it. I'm pretty sure he will, because he was pretty decent. But he only ever competed about 3 or 4 times and never pushed him into it or anything. And then, people say to me, oh, I bet he kills everyone. He's killing all these comps. And I go, no, I don't. I just don't do that with him at all. Do you know what I mean? So I try and, like you said, I don't want to try and live through my kid and push my kid on. If he comes back to me now at 18, 19, and he wants to train, then he can get in the adults class and he can train properly, and do it, do things properly. But yeah, I just think if you're 7, 8 years old, I don't think you should be getting pushed that hard. I think around 14, 15, they're going to know if they really want to do it, aren't they? I pretty much knew at that age, what sports you want to do, what you enjoy doing. But I don't think at 7 or 8 you should be getting Instagram pages and GoFundMe's and getting sent to the Pan Ams, unless you're crazy, really want to do it. There is a few of them. I know a kid called Shay Williams, who's up by us by Liverpool. I know his dad really well. And he's getting to like 16 now, 17, and he's been training since he was 4 or 5. And he is going to be, I think he'll make it. I think he'll make it to the top. He's one of those, he just loves it. He always has loved it. He's never stopped loving it. He's the one pushing his dad all the time to train. But, I don't know loads about the kids scene, but I just know him because I know his dad. Now, I think he will make it, like you say, he's an outlier. But for him, I've seen another 99 out of each 100 who've just disappeared after 2 or 3 years and you never see him again.
Yeah. Because I think as a kid, broadly speaking, you're trying lots of different things, aren't you? You're trying football, you're trying, you go swimming. Yeah, absolutely. You just, As I think if you're, being forced to focus on one thing so intensely when you don't necessarily need to, it can be so damaging.
Yeah,
it might stop you getting into other things as well, because you think, oh no, because what if I end up feeling like that about that other thing,
Yeah, and what if I let my mum and dad down? And what if this? What if kids are thinking that, aren't they, at that age, or they think they have to. I mean, if they're loving it and they're enjoying it, then let them crack on. But if one day they say, "Oh, Dad, I wouldn't mind trying, playing rugby or playing football," then let them play. Let as long as they're doing something. That's what I've always said to my lad. You're never sitting on your, we go and play PlayStation. You're like that. He went through that stage. He's out of it now. But when he was sort of, 11, 12, 13, they're all playing those games, aren't they, online and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, but you're not doing that for hours and hours every night. You know what I mean? You come into the gym, you're going to train first, you're going to do something. As long as you're doing something, then, you can go and play on your PlayStation, you can go and do that. But as long as they're actually doing something, like, you spend a bit of time with them or you're getting them out, even if you just go walking with them in the hills and you like stuff like that, whatever. You do something with them, then I think it's fine. But yeah, but don't force them. Don't force them.
Definitely.
Well, funny you said that. So you said I'm exactly in that.
You said your little one started when he was about 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah.
And you said to someone you needed to train with someone else.
I've got, luckily enough, obviously, because I've been around the scene for a while. Yeah, that's what I did. I didn't want to train him. I used to mess around with him at home on the pads, mess around with him doing jiu-jitsu, just playing around. But when he went to his lessons, I didn't want to be the coach and the person he looked at, and I didn't want, it's my dad and this and that, and to feel. So I used to take him to another gym to do his kickboxing and his jiu-jitsu. So he'd do a couple of nights kickboxing, couple of nights of jiu-jitsu, and he was playing football as well. So we basically have activities sort of 6 days a week. It's only an hour, isn't it, out the day, and then he could go over and then he could do whatever. But I used to take him to different places myself, and I made a conscious decision that I didn't want to be the person pushing him because I didn't want to be one of those pushy parents. So, because I was quite competitive myself, and I just thought I don't want that to rub off or force it on him. Or sometimes I used to actually physically did have those things where the parents could sit in the gym, and I used to sort of take myself away from sitting in there and looking at him because I didn't want to be the guy standing at the end of the mats telling you see them, don't you? Those parents telling the kids, go on, get stuck in, do this, do that. And I thought I don't want to be that guy. So I made a conscious decision to step back from it.
Yeah,
that can be quite a crazy culture to be part of, can't it? We've mentioned this.
Go on, Steve.
Sorry,
I'll just say it can be a bit of a crazy culture to be part of. I think we did a podcast with Jeff Lawson from Ippon Gym a few weeks ago. And
no, Jeff, yeah. No, Jeff well is good.
Yeah.
Good lad.
Yeah, and he was saying the same thing. He just tells them to shut up. The ones that are really pushing,
he should do as well.
Yeah,
but I think a lot of people are scared of losing the kids and losing the membership. And if you're lying, if you're living and you're rude to the parents, that can spread through. So you've got to be careful. But I'm like, listen, if I bring a guy round to my house to fix my car, and he's a qualified expert mechanic, I don't stand there telling him what to do. So I haven't got an absolute clue about cars or anything to do with it. I'm terrible at stuff like that. So I'm not going to stand there going, I think it's the oil filter, mate. I think the pump needs changing. Do you know what I mean? I've just been guessing. So I'm saying, why are these parents standing on the side like going, throw an armbar up? And I'm like, you don't even know where the kid's stuck in Spider Guard. What's he going to do? So
it's crazy. I love the Gracie ethos where they just throw a gi at the parent and go, go on then. Get on the mat.
yeah. Super. Yeah, I'd love to see him. I actually do know a few people who have started training though through watching the kids. So I suppose that's a good thing. But then I've also seen a lot more pushy gobby parents who've never done anything. So it's I bet it's very, like I said, I'm the wrong person to ask on the kid because I've taught 2 classes under duress as well. When I was like the only person left in the gym who could teach it. And I was like, this isn't for me. Yeah, I don't even like teaching beginners classes these days, which I'm not trying to. It's just I find it easier now. I'm a bit older, and I just want to be able to teach what I can teach. Show more. It's more detailed stuff, rather than breaking down the basics. And then I can get a few rounds in myself, and I'm happy. Then I'm happy if I can get that in.
Yeah.
What did you think? Those couple of classes that you taught under duress. What was your kind of thoughts about that? What do you think people who are trying to teach kids need to focus on?
The main thing is it was just such a wide variety of sort of I think like the mental ages, not so much like the physical. Like you could get kids who are between 6 and 8, yeah. And you could get a 6-year-old who could sort of look at something, pick it up and get it. And then you get another 8-year-old who stood in the corner with his finger up his nose, staring at the ceiling. And it was the mental stimulation looked really, really difficult, how to keep them entertained for that full hour. Yeah. So I don't know if you need some sort of psychology thing or whatever it is, but I think it was keeping them entertained, not just, let's play games or let's do this. I mean, my missus used to do, she'd do games at the end. We'd do like the British Bulldog, or we'd do like the tug of war with a belt, and things like that. They all love that. But I'm like, you can't do that for an hour, can you? You're not teaching them anything. No. So I know you can play games where you can put them in mount, can't you? And you've got to bridge them off and you've got to do this. But it was keeping the engagement of the class for the whole hour long session. I thought that was the biggest challenge by a mile. It's hard enough in adults, isn't it? Jesus. Yeah. So when you've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds, it's really difficult. So I do actually have a bit of respect for people who teach kids and they do really well with them. It's definitely a specialist thing. Definitely.
We've said this before, haven't we? That I think it works the best when there's kind of 2 of you. Rather than like if some does when there's one of you, it's because you're not only teaching them jiu-jitsu, but you're managing like behavior and attention spans. So you almost need one person showing them and the other person sometimes going around like, come on, let's just focus. What you doing? Where you going? Come over here, etc.
I think if people have like 20 odd kids on these days, most people have only 2 or 3.
Yeah.
people trying to help them, or so they get some of the older kids in, don't they? They start drafting the blue belts in, don't they? You've got, people, blue belts when people want to teach, don't they, and things like that. And so we'll start from the kids class and give a bit of a hand and see what you do. So I even, let's say, my wife, when she used to do it, she always had a mate helping her. There was always two of them on the mat, minimum of two of them, and that sometimes five would turn up for class, sometimes there'd be 20 in there. It was one of those. It's different, isn't it? Every session, if there's something on and there's the kids there, it's the kids' holidays, or sometimes in the summer in August there'd be the classes would dip right down because people go away on holiday, wouldn't they, and things like that. Christmas time they dip down. So, but I think you need a minimum of two on, definitely. To protect yourself as well. If anything happens and there's you on your own and sometimes the kid, I think you need that sort of protection. And I think these days you probably need cameras and things like that, don't you, just in case an injury happens to a kid that you've not seen and it's happened behind you, and you don't know exactly what's happened. I think these days it's probably a requirement, I would have thought.
Yeah, and I think also, just going back to your point there about the child getting injured. I mean, we've had this many times, where one of them bumps their head into one of the other ones and they start crying, and you have to kind of tend to that kid. If you're on your own, you can't actually then teach the other 19 kids, say, but you do have to like tend to that child, don't you? It becomes really difficult.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, they have a clash of heads or something like that. You can't just ignore that and say, "Get up, stop being." Not these days.
Yeah,
probably could when I was at school. You know what I mean? But not these days. It's like you've got to look after them, and you've got to, imagine something did happen that was serious off that, and the guy, the kid's got a fractured cheekbone, and you were like, "Yeah, just get up," and then he goes to hospital, has an X-ray. Next thing you're in line for getting sued, aren't you? So if there's two or three of you, at least one of you can go and sit with them on the sidelines. Kind of, that's what I'd do anyway. If it was me, I'd make sure it was well and truly covered anyway. If it was my gym and I was running, I mean, we used to basically do that with ours. Make sure everyone had the certificates. Make sure they had all the right sort of stuff. We had cameras in there, and and do it like that. But it's a tough gig, mate, for sure.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because you're essentially inviting kids into the gym, teaching them how to hurt each other, but trying to do it in a safe way so no one gets hurt. It's it's a balancing act.
I noticed that as well. Some kids just didn't get the tap, or some kids didn't let go when they were tapped, and they weren't being malicious. They just sort of didn't get it. I remember seeing one kid quite vividly armbarring another kid and staring at his dad as he was doing it, for sort of probably acknowledgement of his dad. And this other kid tapping away like crazy, and this one just not letting go. And I remember looking at it, I've just walked into the gym and I was going, "Oh God." just waiting for this snap to happen.
On a previous podcast, we were sort of talking about how to incorporate using kind of catch wrestling techniques, but in the kids' classes, because I don't know a lot about catch wrestling, but a lot of what I've been shown is pretty nasty. It's pain compliance, like horrible sort of not soft stuff, and I'm like, this is some good stuff, but how do you teach this to kids? Because it really is just causing maximum pain and discomfort to the other person.
Yeah, I'd probably stay away from some of the submissions, but a lot of the things like the turnovers and the pins, half Nelsons, quarter Nelsons, 3/4 Nelsons, it's a lot of pressure on the neck. Now, I know that's sort of frowned upon, isn't it, in kids' BJJ comps? Yeah. You sort of can't. I mean, you can't even pull a head in a triangle, can you? And things like that. No. So if you start playing 3/4 Nelsons and quarter Nelsons and half Nelsons, it's probably not going to go down well. But this is the bits that I would use. And this is a bit that when people talk to me about catch and they say about it, and when people talk to me about wrestling in general, a lot of the time people say, you say wrestling to someone, and all they ever think of is blast double legs and single legs and things like that. Catch wrestling, the main things that I ever took from it is what you're starting to hear people call riding these days, yeah? And it's more the control on the floor of not allowing the other person back up, not allowing it out to pin the legs, pin the hips, pin the shoulders. I would focus on that sort of stuff for the kids, because all that is not really pain compliant. It's about how you move your body, how to trap the hips, how to trap those. Trey Jones put a DVD out, and not called DVDs these days, are they? But you know what I mean? Instructional out.
Yeah.
Instructional out. I think it was Power Ride, was it? Something like that.
That's right.
And I know Craig well, great lad, great bloke, good full friends. Him came and stayed with me for a week in Spain with a couple of years back. Did some seminars around it. And he takes the piss about catch and stuff like that, mainly because it died out, and a lot of the guys who were still saying they were doing catch were fakes, really, and they were, some of them at the time. It wasn't the proper stuff, but basically the moves that he uses in that are pretty much all catch wrestling. It's just using the Turk, using the claw, how to pin people's legs, how to pin their hips and stuff like that. And I had a little watch of it, and I had a little smirk to myself and giggled and said, basically what you're doing there, that is what you call riding in wrestling. And there's more, I'd say in catch wrestling, that is more important than the actual takedown. Even though, don't get me wrong, the takedown is the start of things, but the control on the floor in catch was massive. And that's what I learned more of than I think you learn more of it's more like, like folk style when they start in the referee's position.
Yeah.
And one of them was what we call turtle, but then you're up on your hands rather than being on your elbows, yeah? And they call that the referee's position. And it's up to the guy on the bottom to escape, and it's up to the guy on the top to try and pin him or turn him over, or what they call ride time, and they get points for it for how long they ride them or how long they do that. Now that's catch wrestling's massive on that, on riding the hips, riding the legs, pinning the guy, putting him to the floor, making it so he can't get up, trying to put his back on the floor. I think you can incorporate that into kids' jiu-jitsu without having to use stuff like the Nelsons and neck cranks and turning the face over and face bars and stuff. Probably not a good idea to start teaching that to 7-8-year-olds. Although we did used to teach a fair bit before. Probably not a good idea. But yeah, but definitely the riding stuff. Definitely, I'd take a lot from the riding stuff. Definitely.
Yeah,
because you could apply that to loads, couldn't you? You could apply that to loads of different elements of like jiu-jitsu, say, couldn't you? Because you're just transitioning, aren't you?
100%. Yeah, my whole game is based on, especially as I've got older now, and my whole game will be is sort of get on top, pin you to the floor, and just make it so you can't regard, you can't do this, or make it as physically hard for you as possible to be. Don't get me wrong, there's some guys you just can't stop, can you? But if I can make it really uncomfortable for you and mount and pin your legs and side control, north, south, and it's like say from knee on belly, it's just a simple thing of people looking for knee on belly. Then as soon as I put my knee on my belly, I'll drag my foot back towards the guy's knee and then pin that leg across the floor. So his two legs are stuck together and he's pinned on his side. And I can sit there all day. Whereas knee on belly, someone pretty much, you score 2 points off it in a competition, but they pretty much nearly always escape or you go to mount, don't you? Whereas I think a riding position across with my shin pinning your thigh to the floor is a much stronger position. Plus you're contorted because you're twisted in half. Your legs are one way, your back's pointing the other way. And it's a very, very difficult. And if I've got an underhook on either side, it's going to be very difficult for you to move. So things like that, I think, and that's totally legal in kids and all the way up. And I think it's starting to come through now. You see it look at ADCC now, what they do in ADCC. That sort of style of grappling is what I wanted for Grapplefest, because it's just everything. It's a mixture of everything these days, isn't it? People are going to wrestling, freestyle, folk style, catch, judo, Greco, BJJ. It's just all thrown in together, isn't it? I think everyone's just realised, listen, if we just do everything and we get good at everything, then that's the best style, isn't it?
Yeah, funny you say that. We were talking about this a couple of podcasts ago about like it's the similar trajectory to MMA, right? So the first few UFCs, it was very much martial art versus martial art, wasn't it? And then people started trying different things. Then you'd get guys like the Chuck Liddell era where they'd have one thing that were really good at, but they could do a few things. And now the top guys, they're world class,
everything,
aren't they? And
everything.
Yeah, and you could say the same about the sort of elite grapplers in the world, guys like Craig and people like that. They're just trying everything, and they're getting world class at all these new and up and coming sort of generation, if you like.
Yeah,
they're trying to get world class at all these different sort of disciplines so that they can fill those gaps.
Going back to what we said, 20, 30 minutes ago, whatever it was, saying it's just there's only so many ways of manipulating the human body. I just call it a complete hybrid grappling system, and it's just a rule sets is what dictate, like we said before, the rule sets in those various different disciplines, judo, BJJ, wrestling, are what separate them, aren't they? All the moves are pretty much the same. So if you can do them, and then this thing what I call submission grappling, is pretty much there's very limited. I mean, Grapplefest, we've hardly got any rules at all. It's really, as long as it's nothing absolutely dangerous like getting spiked on your head or anything crazy, like that. I pretty much say to the guys in the rules meeting, I said, listen, there's only sort of, so many ways out of this. Is if you tap, you're unconscious and the referee pulls you off, or it gets to the end of the time period. That's the only three ways this is sort of getting stopped, this match. It's not, it's going to be on points. There's nothing there. It's, you're just going for it to finish. So it's on you. So I think everyone sort of merged it together, isn't it? We've still got guys who pull guard, butt scoot, and they're going for your legs and things like that. Then we got guys who are wrestling and throwing each other all over the place. But I love the fact, like, say in wrestling and judo, you get thrown and you land on your back and it's over. And I'm like, well, we don't do that. We just carry on, don't we? We just carry on and go, okay, let's go for it. And we just carry on to one of us generally is. I don't feel you throwing me on my shoulders is the end of me, but maybe it will be on concrete, but but on a mat, it's definitely not.
I think
I like the way it carries on. And
I think the loosening of the rule sets in sort of submission grappling, like, no specific outfit, like the outfit doesn't really come into it. Like you're not grabbing hold of it or anything like that.
Yep.
And then just opening it up to basically being able to just do anything. And the fight has to continue until someone is either unconscious or they give up. That is, I think maybe that's why it's growing so much, because it's the more rules there are, the more nuance there is, the more complicated it gets. And I think you kind of lose people there, whereas it's a very pure kind of system at the moment. Submission grappling, isn't it?
That's what I wanted. I wanted the grappling that I do in the gym, which was always that. It was just sometimes we'd have rounds, or it was just like training, and it'd be like we'd just say, right, we're starting tonight, and say there'd be 11 people on the match, yeah. You'd have 5 pairs and one sitting there, and you just kept going until someone submitted, and the one person was in, then he jumped in. And you just keep going like that all night. And when you were the man out or the second man out, whatever, you just carried on. There was no rules, there was no this, there was no thing. We just carried on until we got tapped. And I was like, this is sort of grappling we do in the gym. We always did heel ups from the start. I've always done neck cranks. I've always done twisters. I've always done, we did arm bars. We did everything. We got to everything. And I think the less rules there is, the more exciting it is. We get people coming to our shows who are, a lot of the time they're either with the mates on, but they don't really know the rules, or they're with the husbands or with the wives or the girlfriends or whatever it is. They come, they go, oh, that was amazing, really enjoyed it, it was great, because it was just like, well, do you know what, like grappling in the UFC, it's like that, but there's no punching, but they're just going to try and kill each other. and people love it. They're having a beer, they're in the crowd watching it, having a drink, and they enjoy it. Yeah, but I think the less rules there is, the better it is for me.
Definitely. Do you think? Can you see like submission grappling and jiu-jitsu and just grappling in general sort of continuing to grow and getting more and more popular?
I think so. I mean, the gi is. I make jokes about the gi, but it's just that I don't really train it too much. But I like the gi. I've competed in it. I've trained in it. I went there. I learned it. I got my belts. Did all that. Got my black belt and did everything. It's just I prefer submission grappling. That's just all it is. But look at the competitions, especially in the gi. It's still huge. You know what I mean? What was the 7,000 or 8,000 at the Europeans in January? Over 10,000 at the World Masters in last year in the summer. That's huge. Do you know what I mean? Because you can get these guys. You've got your Masters divisions or something. You can get a guy who's 40, who's in half decent shape, but he can still go on the mats 2-3 nights a week. Have a laugh pretty safely with his mates. You can't do that in wrestling and judo and stuff like that. You can't get thrown on your head day after day when you're in your 40s and above, unless you start when you're a kid and you've got really good technique. But it's very, very difficult to start at 40. Yeah. But you can go and play guard, keep yourself relatively safe, relatively injury-free, have some good rolls with your mates. You're going to get smoked by the old 20, 25-year-old who trains twice a day.
Sure.
Just learn to deal with that one. Yeah. But you can go and play it, can't you? And you can go and tell your mates you do UFC. You understand the ground game, you understand that. And I think it's huge. People can go and enjoy themselves and go, I know people who've hardly ever done anything before and come and done it. I know other people who've come and not enjoyed it, but I'm like, well, that's like anything in life, isn't it? Some sports you enjoy, some sports you don't. But I think it's going to keep growing. I definitely do. And I think the gi is huge. I think the no gi is more for the elites and the professionals. I think that's going to separate off a little bit, and I think that's where the money's going to be in it, especially with the UFC and people get it when the gi comes on. It's slower pace, and I have this thing where I don't think it's more technical, because I actually think your technique has to be slightly better in no gi to control and pin a person. is a lot harder in no-gi. So if you people always say, oh yeah, he's athletic, he just slips out of stuff with sweat, and I'm like, well, that's on you. That's because your technique was crap, you know. That's my point of view. But I think the fact that people can come in and play in the gi and play no gi, any walk of life, you know. You've got people, haven't we, ranging from brickies all the way up to barristers, you know, in your gym. Every gym's got that, haven't they? All different walks of life. You all get on the mat. Everyone's equal. It is what it is. I think that's really good. But I do see the no-gi and the gi separating a little bit. I think the elites will become more the no-gi and the money side of it. But the hobbyist side of it, I think the gi will just remain huge. And I think, you know, that's what, like you say, the Masters guys, I think pretty safe to say all three of us are well in the Masters, aren't we? So we're, you know, you understand it, don't you? And
yeah,
you can get in there and enjoy yourselves, can't you? Yeah.
Definitely.
That's just my opinion, though.
No,
just my opinion.
I agree, and I think we're all hopeful that, like, you know, submission grappling and jiu-jitsu and grappling in general will continue to grow into bigger and bigger sport. Are we likely to see the return of Grapplefest at any point?
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I had about 3 years ago, but I had which is why I'm wearing sunglasses. It's not just for the I'm not wearing them just for the sun. It's I had another operation in well, I had one in December and one in January. I basically detached my retina, and first thing my eye was hanging out. Basically, it's pretty serious one about 3 years ago. And then in June, I thought it was I went doing a seminar tour in the UK. 10 days, and I thought when I was over there, I actually thought it's the weather. I've come back and the weather's so bad because everything was really dark and I couldn't see properly on that side at all. And I remember walking into a woman I was in the train station in Nottingham, and I turned around and walked straight into this woman, nearly knocked her fly, and I was like, so sorry, you know, trying to pick her up, sent her flying, she was tiny. And then I said to my missus, I said, I think there's something wrong with my eye again. So I went in and the guy tested it and then just said, basically, yeah, your retina's completely detached again. Your eye's hanging off. You need to go to hospital right away. And about 4 hours later, I was having my whole eye reattached. So
crikey,
I've basically been on a no-fly since June. Yeah, it's pretty. I'm basically blind in the left eye now, which is a bit of a nightmare. So yeah, I've been on a no-fly since June. I did have 2 dates set up, and I had to cancel them. So I've got a provisional date, which is sort of around sort of June time. I'm in with the doctors again on Monday, and then I've got to go, I think, then another week after or 10 days after. I'm hoping to get the all clear on it then. I mean, I'm training again now, so I hope I get the bloody all clear. So,
yeah.
I've been training for a while. They keep saying to me,
classic story.
Yeah, they keep saying to me, "You're not going too hard, are you?" And I'm going, no, I'm just I'm being fine. But it's in my eyes, no pun intended, it can't really get any worse than it is now. So I've learned to live with it. You know, it's pretty much the same injury that happened to Michael Bisping.
Right.
You've all seen him, haven't you?
Right. Okay.
So I've pretty much got the same thing. Yeah. Ended up. Yeah. That's what the lens dislocated. The retina kit has come off a couple of times. A hole in the macula, and then basically the optic nerve, which sends images to your brain, that's been damaged. So I basically can't see anything out of it. So it's made things pretty difficult. Like the sunlight's really bad. Night times it can be pretty rough. Driving's pretty rough. You know, if it gets too late, my missus has to drive and stuff. But the one thing that I can do quite well is grappling, because once you got your hands on somebody, you don't really need your eyes that much. So it's the one thing is not really affected is actually my training, because at the start, obviously, you've got to be careful, and everyone in my gym's well aware. So I just say, please don't put your hands on my face. You know, it was an accident. I got eye poked pretty badly. It was a complete accident. It wasn't. You know, it was one of them things. I've never had that happen to me before in 20 odd years, and that's the way it was. I was just unlucky, but it was it made a right mess. But yeah, I'm digressing again. So yeah, I'm waiting to be passed to fly again. And when it does, and then I'm basically waiting to put it together. So yeah, it'll pretty much return in 2025. If it will be, because if it goes after June, then July and August are traditionally pretty crap months to put shows on, because kids are on holiday, people going away, you know, things like that. So if it's not done June time, it'll be looking at September, October. But we will be back this year.
That'd be amazing. And have you got any kind of names slated to get on the card?
I have got some that I've spoken to. I had a couple of real big matches that I put together. I can't really say anything yet because obviously I've got to keep that. But yeah, we'll always go. We're like I call myself a pro am show because again, this is the way I try to do things. I wanted to put like a main card on, which we put like 12 on the main card. We thought we'd put like 30 matches on. 12 on the main card, which are pretty much sort of black belt level, and at least 6 of those matches are international big names. Put them in, and then we always have 18 on the undercard, which starts from basically we've had blue belts, purple belts, brown belts all the way through, and we're trying to give those guys a shot, to push themselves, make a name. It's worked pretty well from when we first started. Did the first shows in the end of 2000, start 2018. It was start 2018. We've got guys now who've been sort of having headlining, not headlining the main events, but, guys like Owen O'Flanagan, people like that who've come all the way through. Owen Livesey, I was the first person to even put him on the show. No one even knew who he was. I'd known him for years back in the day he used to live near me. I knew him from his judo and everything, trained with him quite a bit. People like that, who've come all the way through, and then now the top level black belts are in ADCC, Mark McQueen. Guys like that, we've had them on. So that's the way I do it. I slightly different market from other shows. I tend to find when it was happening, you had Polaris, and they were just bringing in sort of world stars, and it was Polaris Jiu-Jitsu, and half the matches were in the gi, IBJJF rules. Half the matches were sort of either ADCC rules or still IBJJF no gi rules without heel ups and stuff, which was great. It was a great show. I went to the first few of the Polaris shows. And then in between, you'd have the smaller shows, which was just local guys. And I was like, I'm going to find that middle niche. Do you know what I mean? Where it's basically, I'm going to give guys a chance to go on a show that's got world superstars on it. We've had everybody on, haven't we?
Yeah.
List of names of Ruatulos, Craig Jones, we've had everyone. We've had everyone through there, all the Daisy Fresh guys. We've had them, all the way through. But I'm going to give the smaller guys a chance to be on those shows. I think they're the guys that appreciate it the most. They really push it. They really like it. They love being on. The energy's there. They bring the crowd. And I always said, listen, I want it like the darts, not the snooker. Snooker's quiet. Everyone's sitting there. Everyone's, the occasional clap, isn't it? And I'm like, I want the crowd, the drinking, the screaming, the shouting.
Yeah.
It's a party atmosphere. So yeah, that's what we've gone for. Yeah. So yeah, that's our market.
Yeah. Sounds exciting. It's definitely the way to do it.
Yeah, good to hear that'll be coming back this year. I think a lot of people will be very happy about that. It was a sort of mainstay, one of the the top 2 shows in the UK and around the world for a long time, I think. Some of the best grapplers in the world. Definitely. Yeah, and showcasing, like you said, the top UK grapplings.
I must get a message nearly every day, or at least not every other day, saying when's it coming back, and I for a while I had a little copy and paste on my phone saying we'll be back soon. I'm just getting over some surgery, but these days I just sort of say, listen, man, it'll be back soon. Just bear with me. So we're getting to the end of it, hopefully.
Amazing. Look, we'll call it there, Chris. It's been a great interview. I think it's been really interesting again to hear from another sort of top UK grappler about a very sort of, what I would say is like a relaxed approach to, getting their kids into grappling and martial arts and things like that, not being too pushy. Yourself and Jeff had very similar approaches. And I think, a lot of people could probably learn from that and sort of think, if they do want their child to get into jiu-jitsu or grappling or martial arts, it's like, just sort of introducing them to it, but then allowing whatever happens, after that to happen and not being too kind of pushy with it. So it's great to hear your kind of approach with your boy. And great to hear that you're kind of getting back to health and getting back to grappling.
Thank you. Appreciate that. But please come back to the parents. If any of them are listening, just let your kids enjoy it. Just let them enjoy themselves. And then there's a great chance that they'll do better. They'll be better. They'll self-defense. They'll be good. They'll be able to look after themselves. Just let them enjoy it. Let them enjoy it.
Definitely.
Great advice.
Good advice.
I completely agree.
Right, guys, if you've enjoyed today's episode, like and subscribe. And go and follow Chris. What are your social channels, Chris, where people can see you?
Well, obviously there's Grapplefest, which is just Grapplefest, and then my personal one is Chris Tomo U99 on Instagram.
Great stuff. Right. Well, from all of us, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.